Hello, everyone. I'm back with a new batch of scary stories. Make yourselves comfortable and enjoy. Have a pleasant listen. Why are you so pale? Yeah, Christ, I bet. I look like a ghost. Feels like I've lost 3 liters of blood or something. What? No, not a scratch on me. Sorry, I'm rambling. I'm just, what's the word, shaken. It's a strange feeling. I've seen a lot on the job. I always thought that if I ever had to experience something like this myself, it wouldn't be anything new. But this is some real shit. It feels like I'm hovering above my own body. Just cut the string and I'll drift away. You saw the crime scene, right? Don't look at the photos. Don't even touch the folder. You'll thank me later. My knees won't stop shaking. Is that why you're gripping your coffee like that? I'm shaking the table. Yeah. Give me a second, let me move the chair back. There. That's better. We need to start officially. All right. Can you confirm for the record that you are waiving your right to an attorney? No, I still don't need a lawyer. I mean, yes, I waive that legal right. Sorry. I am of sound mind. As much as that's possible for me right now. Are you sure? Yes. Put it in the record. Retired Detective Hobson Millgate waived his right to an attorney. I won't need a lawyer once the district attorney stops vomiting and decides whether this should even go public. A jury will never see this. Are you ready to begin? No. But I'm going to talk anyway. What brought you to the crime scene that night? Would you believe me if I said I was about to go fishing? Doesn't matter. Hold on. It's hard to gather my thoughts. I've never sat on this side of the interrogation table before. I guess it all started with a reporter named Beimer. She contacted me by email about a week ago, claiming she had new information about the Driscoll murders. I was the lead investigator. The case was unsolved for 20 years. A cold case. Honestly, at first I thought it was complete bullshit. You know how it goes. Most of the time they don't even mean harm. Everyone thinks they have that one piece of information that will crack the case wide open. It's easy to build theories when you don't have to match them against evidence. The Driscoll case was huge around here. Lots of media attention. Over the years, I must have heard a couple hundred terrible theories. When I retired, I handed the investigation over to Detective Carroll. I didn't want to bother him, he's busy dealing with gang cases now. So I decided to check the lead myself. Out of courtesy. I didn't expect anything to come of it. I met her for lunch at Pierre's Café. Pretty blonde, looked professional. Didn't really fit the typical profile of a hoaxer or conspiracy nut. Not that I fully believe in those profiles. She could have just as easily been one of those creepy girls who get off on death. God knows I've dealt with those too. I still thought she was feeding me nonsense. Or maybe she herself had been fooled. But she had a folder. It looked legitimate. Inside was something like a confession. Well, Driscoll's confession. Though he wasn't the killer. God, I wish he had been. That would have been so much better for everyone. Can you brief us on the Driscoll case? Right. Let me see. That was 20 years ago. 20 damn years. Take your time, Hop. Thanks. The Driscolls were a family of 6 living in the suburbs. Upper middle class. The father was a lawyer. The mother ran a small business, selling handmade ceramics from home. 4 kids, all school-aged, both high school and elementary. Good kids. Straight-A students. No criminal records. The oldest son got caught with weed at school once, but that was it. The kind of ordinary domestic life you only start to question if you look too closely. They disappeared on October 13, 1994. No bodies. No traces. A mystery, made even bigger by the fact that it happened right before Halloween. That's probably why the media went insane. They still show up on unsolved mystery programs to this day. An entire family vanished, and no one saw anything. No one knew where they went. A neighbor reported noise. That's how we got involved. They had an alarm system, and the neighbor thought it might be a burglary or something similar. We sent a patrol car. No one answered the door, so the officer entered the house. In the youngest daughter's bedroom, there were clear signs of a struggle. The bed was overturned, sheets torn. The alarm turned out to be a carbon monoxide detector. We found elevated levels of carbon monoxide in the fabric of all the blankets, except for the youngest daughter's. If it hadn't been for the detector, we never would have tested that. The neighbor said the alarm had been going off for over a day, and no one answered during that time. A few blocks away, in a trash bin, we found several aluminum canisters and hoses. At the time, we assumed the family had been sedated with gas and taken elsewhere. Except for the daughter, who likely woke up at the last moment and fought back. The investigation hit a dead end. Of course, our first thought was the father. We checked everything, no motive, no evidence. Same with the mother. Relatives were clean too. The father had several clients who might have had a motive, but none who had the means. He was a divorce lawyer, but he never handled cases involving people capable of wiping out an entire family without leaving a trace. 3 blocks away lived a chemistry teacher. We investigated him for a while because of the gas canisters, but he had an alibi. Same thing with the dentist who lived nearby. The wife had some online flirting with a guy from England, but nothing serious, and he wasn't even in the country at the time of the murders. In the end, painfully, we settled on the theory of a random killer. Those bastards are nearly impossible to catch when there's no pattern. We must have sunk tens of thousands of man-hours into that case, chasing ghosts, and got nothing. We did manage to trace the canisters. They were stolen from a laboratory about 10 miles from here. No security footage. No leads on the thief. After 6 months with no repeat incidents, the case went cold. The Driscolls were sedated and abducted. As I said, the bodies were never found. Who could say for certain that they didn't just run away? For the record, I would have preferred to tell this story only once. What can you tell us about how this confession reached Ms. Beimer? She had been following the case for years, both personally and professionally. As I said, it captured a lot of imaginations. Even otherwise rational people thought it might have been aliens, ghosts, or demons. Ms. Beimer published a retrospective article on the murders for the 20th anniversary. That sparked another wave of interest. It happened from time to time. As usual, I declined to comment, citing a lack of new evidence. Still, I remembered her request for comment, which is why I agreed to meet her for lunch. After the article was published, Ms. Beimer claimed she had received a folder in the mail. She wanted me to verify its authenticity. The most important part of that folder was the confession. I assured Ms. Beimer that hoaxes like that were common, especially with old cases like this one, and that I personally had heard 24 confessions to the Driscoll murders. But she insisted. Once I realized she wasn't trying to con me, and that she wasn't one of those people who get off on talking about murder, I agreed to meet her. She told me the confession had arrived by mail, in the same envelope she showed me at lunch. Can you describe the contents? Old newspaper clippings detailing the progress of my investigation. They were yellowed with age, as you'd expect, so I assumed they came from a killer's trophy book. There were also 6 photographs, supposedly of the Driscoll family, and several additional photos of the location where they were taken. Just look at my hands. They won't stop shaking. I'm trying, I really am, but I can't control it. I'll need to ask the medic for a sedative after I finish my statement, otherwise I don't think I'll be able to sleep. No, I'm fine for now. I don't want anything interfering with my memory while you're recording. Just holding all of this in my head is like... Sorry. I'll focus. The photos did, in fact, show the Driscoll family. I didn't know it at the time. The images were badly degraded, you could have mistaken them for anyone. Facial features were hard to make out. Still, given how carefully the folder had been assembled, I decided it warranted further investigation. As for the confession letter itself, it was short. It contained an address. That was the first thing I noticed. I couldn't find the address online, which meant it had to be old. The letter read, "Stop printing lies. I didn't kill anyone. It just took time to prepare them for breakfast." There was no signature. And I just remembered something. God damn it. We received a breakfast menu about a month after the disappearance. Someone had circled pancakes in red ink. The note said, "They are not dead. They are being prepared for breakfast." We filed it under junk leads. Oh my God. Detective Milgate, do you need a moment? Oh God, how could I have known? We tried to trace that menu. Never figured out where it came from. None of the local restaurants. All identifying information had been cut out. I don't know what else we could have done back then. God help me. Why did you decide to personally investigate the address listed in the letter? I wanted to be sure it wasn't a hoax. I still wasn't convinced. For 20 years people fed me fake evidence. I guess the case got into my head too. I always thought that one day I'd remember something I missed and finally solve it. It was unbelievable that someone would just drop the answer into my lap. I had to see it with my own eyes. Ms. Beimer located the site through city archives, but neither of us knew if it still existed. It was an abandoned industrial building. Its last active mailing address was 50 years ago. It could have collapsed by now. Who knows? I think I also wanted to be the one to close it. Regardless of how the answer came to me, this case had hung over my life for 20 years. Ms. Beimer and I agreed to meet there the next morning. Can you describe the crime scene? Yes. It was an industrial building, as I said. Roughly 120 feet long and maybe 45 feet wide. A wooden structure. At first glance, it looked about as deteriorated as the surrounding buildings. But I noticed several areas of the facade had been recently patched. Closer inspection showed the entrance was secured with a chain and padlock. From what I could tell, it used to be a sheet metal workshop. Excuse me, do you have a trash can? I think I'm going to be sick. Thank you. Sorry. I thought there was nothing left in me. No, I want to finish this. Then I'll need the sedative. I smelled something inside the building. Very faint. I decided it was enough probable cause to enter. Not that I needed it, I'm a civilian now, but you never forget the smell of death. They were. It would have been better if it had only smelled like that. I still know how to pick locks, so I went inside. You know, I really wish they had been corpses. I truly wish he had been a serial killer. I really do. Please tell me you believe me. I believe you. Can you describe what was inside the building? I'm trying not to lose my train of thought. I really am. I just want to sleep for a very long time after this. The medic is here. Sedative ready. Thank God. The warehouse wasn't as abandoned as we initially thought. Inside was a corridor with 6 rooms. The building was old, but it was clear the hallway and rooms were newer than the rest of the structure. The walls between the rooms were soundproofed. No windows to the outside. No doors between the rooms. Each room only opened into the corridor. At that point, I tried to make Ms. Beimer leave. The smell was stronger inside. It was the kind of smell that felt like sand in your nose, like fine dust settling on your skin. Inside the rooms were presses, custom-built hydraulic presses, about 4 by 8 feet. At first, I couldn't tell what they were, because they loomed over something that looked like hospital beds. Each room contained 4 drips and other medical equipment. Of course, that's how he kept them alive for so long. I think I'm starting to black out. Would you like to take a break? Starting this story again would be worse than finishing it. Then please describe your next actions. The building was clearly an active crime scene. At that point, I had no doubt. I was standing in the lair of someone I believed to be a serial killer. I tried several times to tell Ms. Beimer to leave. She refused, saying it would be wrong to leave me alone. I didn't have time to argue with her. I decided that while she was a pain in the ass, she seemed competent enough and unlikely to be a liability, as long as she stayed out of the way. I had to choose. Either act alone, on the impossible, unbelievable chance that the family was still alive and in danger. Or leave and call for backup. I had told my wife where I was going. So I knew that if the worst happened, my absence would be noticed and reported. Neither of us had cell service. Sorry, I'm drifting again. That's when I heard it. Not a sigh, something like a sigh, but not quite. I don't want to describe it any further. There was a sound. It compelled me to move forward. I had to act. That was all that mattered. At the far end of the warehouse there was a staircase leading down into the basement. I told Ms. Beimer to stay upstairs and drew my service revolver. I also had a flashlight with me. I turned it on as I descended. The basement had been dug by hand. Possibly by the very people who were listed as missing. I don't know. The floor was bare earth, and from it extended a tunnel, so long that it had to be supported by wooden braces at regular intervals. When my flashlight first illuminated the stack, I wished they had been dead. I wished he had been a serial killer. Please, don't rush me. When I came back to myself, my first thought was, thank God they're all dead. I'm 64 years old, God damn it. I'm not some young man who can just forget things. When you're young, you have this sense of invulnerability, like you'll never die. I don't have that anymore. Look at me. I'm sitting here shaking while this was done to them. This is my fault. I should have found them. I should have saved them, somehow. I'm sorry, Hop, but I have to ask. Can you describe what you saw? Yes. Yes, I can. At first, I didn't understand what I was looking at. Hell, I still don't. It was a stack. About 2 feet thick. Judging by the smell and the color, it was clearly made of flesh. At first I thought maybe he had cut them into pieces and stacked them. That alone would have been more than enough. The first thing that made me realize the truth was an eyeball. At the top of the stack was a perfectly round eyeball, sitting in a socket stretched to the size of a saucer. And that's when I understood. What I was looking at was 20 years of torture. He had kept the entire Driscoll family beneath those presses for 20 years, keeping them alive with 4 drips, increasing the pressure so slowly that their bodies had time to adapt, until they were flattened into a slab. He compressed them by roughly half a centimeter per year for 20 years. Then he removed them, once they were too broken and pathetic to move, with no chance of recovery, and stacked them on top of each other. I have no idea why, and I don't want to know. I was still thinking, thank God they're all dead. Then the one on top started wheezing. What did they say? At first, nothing. He couldn't speak without assistance. It must have been Avery Driscoll. Not that I could tell age or gender, but the hair, what little remained, was blonde. The head was a mass of scars. I believe the son of a bitch who did this must have removed parts of their skulls. Otherwise, I can't imagine how he achieved such a flattened shape. Not as flat as the rest of the bodies, but still flattened. God knows how their brains survived it. Their lips were pierced by their teeth, which had broken through the skin, probably after the presses crushed their noses. Avery was 14 when he disappeared. I stopped shaking. It's strange how the human body works. What else did you see? There was a device, some kind of pump. I followed the hose with my flashlight and realized that everyone in the stack was connected to it. You see, I don't think they could breathe on their own anymore. There simply wasn't enough volume left for their lungs to expand. Each of them had some kind of opening in their chest. There was a switch on the pump. I don't know why I flipped it. I was panicking. I wanted to do something. Maybe some stupid part of my brain thought that if I turned it on, they would inflate and everything would be fine. I flipped the switch. It increased the airflow into the top hose. I heard the pump strain. And that's when Avery Driscoll started screaming. He begged me to kill him. He said other things too. None of it made much sense. He kept screaming, damnation of the mistake, over and over. And something about his family, I didn't understand. He was in pain. I hope he had lost his sanity years earlier. Oh my God, that's what I thought. I didn't know what to do. He wouldn't stop screaming. I think he believed I was his tormentor. When I looked closely at his eye, I saw it was almost entirely white scar tissue. He was blind. I once spoke with burn survivors. They told me that, over time, they were able to find meaning and purpose in life again. I don't know how anyone in the Driscoll family could have done that. I told him who I was. I said I was a detective. I said I was there to help. I repeated it over and over, fully aware that no one and nothing in the world could help them anymore. Ms. Beimer came running. The sound had drawn her in. Before she saw the stack, she said it was me screaming, and that she came to help. I don't remember screaming. But she came anyway. Then she saw the stack, and she screamed too. But I was focused on Avery Driscoll. He could hear. For a few moments, consciousness returned to him. It was almost impossible to understand what he said, but I will remember it for the rest of my life. Please kill me. It hurts. I don't want to be a monster. Please kill me and tell my family I died a long time ago. I don't know if they're still looking for me. Don't let them know what happened to me. Please kill me. He could still cry. He cried, even though his tear ducts were too deformed for it to be visible. I had to physically force Ms. Beimer to leave. That is the one thing I regret more than not solving the case 20 years ago, not just for her sake, but because of what she did afterward. I don't think she could have hurt them more, even if she tried. She took away the last comfort any of them had. You see, they hadn't been able to speak to each other for 20 years. She said. Is this all of them? Yes. That was the entire Driscoll family. They were all there. They were all alive. The entire family. For 20 years, every member of the Driscoll family had no idea that the other prisoners were their own relatives. Each of them clung to the hope that the others were safe. Each of them dreamed that someone out there still loved them and was not suffering. Do you know what 6 people sound like when they've been tortured for 20 years and then crushed down to a width of 4 inches so they can be stacked on top of one another? It sounds like the very gates of hell grinding open. I think that's enough. Detective Milgate. Not yet. This was my mistake. I should have dug deeper. I should have followed that lead more thoroughly. Maybe that's what they meant when they screamed, "Damnation of the mistake." It was my mistake, and therefore my responsibility. I shot them. Mercy is a heavy thing, but I owed it to them. I failed to save them. One bullet would have passed cleanly through all of them, but I emptied the entire revolver to make sure they were no longer suffering. To grant them that final rest. It was the only kindness I could offer them. After that, we left and called for backup. Neither Ms. Beimer nor I wanted to remain with the bodies. I chose not to go back down into the basement with the investigative team. I asked if I could give my statement and leave. After one of them saw what I had seen, they agreed. May I have the sedative now? Yes, of course. Thank you. Please call the medic. I'll roll up my sleeve. My wife has diabetes, so I'm used to this. Oh, and please, do the same for Ms. Beimer. After everything, she seemed worse off than I was. The poor thing couldn't even cry or vomit. Of course, you know where she is now. She told the officer in charge at the scene that she was going home, but we haven't been able to contact her since. Did you try checking with the newspaper? Which one? The Daily World. You're sure? There is no one employed at the Daily World with the last name Beimer. Story 2. Music. My life is a constant measurement of pain. It comes and goes through my nerves, as if drawn by the phases of a moon I cannot see. All my life I searched for that moon, for the reason behind my suffering, but it remained hidden behind clouds of mystery. Most of my life was spent within the whitewashed walls of hospitals, where the sharp smell of antiseptic was a cruel assault on my senses. One might expect that after so many hours of observation and analysis, the doctors and nurses would have found a way to fix me. Unfortunately, they could not see the cause any more than I could. Week after week, my parents laid me on a stiff hospital bed, and doctors watched me as though I were suspended inside a cage of shattered glass. Afraid to move me, yet afraid not to. I was irreparable. I had a bitter moon. As a child, I had an unexplainable love for mirrors. I don't know why, but it always felt as though when I looked into a mirror, I wasn't looking at myself. The person in the reflection looked like me, yes, but there was a disconnect. She didn't feel like me. She felt like a friend. That might have unsettled some people. To me, it was a blessing. In my hospital room, the same ordinary room that by the time I was 8 was almost always reserved just for me, a mirror hung across from my bed. In it, I saw my pale reflection. The color drained from my skin until I became as white as the walls that watched over me. The girl in the mirror, not quite me, became my best friend. It's sad, yes, but not for the reason you might think. As the years passed, my pain became multifaceted and manifested in nearly every imaginable way. When I was 10, I collapsed screaming in a park. My mother thought I had broken my arm. I was clutching it so tightly to my chest. X-rays at the hospital showed it was perfectly fine, yet I screamed in pain for hours afterward. They tried to give me morphine, which I always hated because it made me nauseous. It didn't help. I lay in the ward while my mother tried to hold back tears, and I stayed in the hospital for a full week before the blinding pain dulled into a deep ache and I could return to my life. One night, when my mother thought I was asleep, I heard her quietly arguing with my father. There was fear in her voice. I was terrified they wanted to get rid of me, because I was such a difficult child. When I was 11, it was my back. It felt as though my flesh was being torn open, exposing muscle, sharp rips licking my nerves with fire. I didn't tell my parents. I stayed in bed all day, even though it was summer and I wanted to go outside and make sure the sun was still there. I thought that if I told them and they took me back to the hospital, they would put me in foster care. I don't know why I thought that. So I lay on my stomach, crying, wishing I could be a normal little girl. The next day, the pain was still there, but manageable. My parents never found out. When I was 12, tooth pain sent me back to the hospital. This time, I couldn't hide it. It felt like my teeth were being torn out by the roots without anesthesia. Doctors injected my gums and palate, trying to numb the pain, but it remained constant, like a bright spark of heated wire threaded through my entire mouth. At times, I felt like a monster. As though all my pain was trying to escape me, burning and mutilating my body in the process. Sometimes I felt like a failed science experiment, left to rot in suburban America, beyond the reach of even the best medicine the first world could offer. But most often, I felt like a freak. A freak who cried at night when her parents couldn't see, and who made friends with mirrors. Perhaps that's why, in my best dreams, I wasn't so strange. My greatest wish was always to be normal. The girl in the mirror was my best friend, but not my only one. It's true that it was hard for a hospital child to make friends at school. Everyone knew I was sick, fragile, different, and they were afraid that if they touched me, I would shatter, and they wouldn't be able to put me back together. Most children kept their distance. But there were always nurses. There was Emma, who usually gave me injections and drew my blood. There was Chrissy, who sat with me during her breaks and read me stories when my parents couldn't stay. And there was Seamus. Once, he bought me a plush unicorn because I had forgotten my favorite toy at home when my parents rushed me to the hospital. Then there were the doctors, two I saw more than any others. Dr. Cadell and Dr. Lewis. They were as constant a presence in the hospital as I was, and they were quickly assigned to oversee my ongoing case so they could monitor me more closely. I grew attached to both of them, and they even let me call them by their first names. Dr. Cadell became Adam. Dr. Lewis became Peter. Adam was tall and broad, with permanently flushed cheeks and a warm, expressive laugh. He was usually called in when I was inconsolable from pain, because the way he spoke soothed me like nothing else. When I was falling apart, they called Adam, because he knew how to hold me together. Peter was a bit intimidating for a pediatrician, a true giant with a wild beard, but he was kind, charming, and saved his best jokes just for me, knowing how much I loved them. Sometimes I caught him looking at me strangely. He looked intrigued. And I suppose I truly was intriguing, with pain that had no cause and answered to no medicine. I didn't mind his interest. It was far easier to bear than the pity I had grown used to seeing from new staff. He continued overseeing my case even after I grew too old to be under his care. He seemed absolutely determined to cure me. These people became my family and my friends, so I suppose there was a bright side to my illness after all. It was just hard to see sometimes, when the pain blinded my eyes. When I was 16, a new kind of pain arrived. At first, it grew slowly, a heaviness in my chest, as if my flesh were expanding inward, filling spaces that should have been left alone. After about half an hour of that dense, suffocating pressure, I told my parents, and once again they rushed me to the hospital. By the time we arrived, I was already struggling to breathe. I tried to control the panic. At 16, I should have been used to my body betraying me, but this time felt different. When I arrived, Adam was there to meet me. As they hooked me up to all the usual machines, he joked with me, trying to calm me down. "You haven't visited us in a while," he said. "I was starting to think you'd gotten tired of us." I would have snorted if I'd had enough air. Instead, I managed a weak, wheezing laugh and replied, "Yeah, right. Wouldn't want to disappoint Peter. He's still looking for a cure." I noticed a shadow cross Adam's face and asked, "What's wrong?" "Well, Peter hasn't been in the hospital for a few days. He's on medical leave." The look on Adam's face told me there was more to it than he was willing to say, but I couldn't focus on questioning him. With every passing second, the air around me felt thinner, and I could barely draw in enough breath to stay conscious. Adam hooked me up to an oxygen monitor and frowned at the readings. "You're barely getting any oxygen. We'll need a mask. How are you feeling?" By then, I couldn't answer. The air in my lungs was rapidly running out, and my head began to spin. The edges of my vision started to shake, reminding me of the Polaroid photos my mother used to take, how she shook them to make them develop faster. In my mind, I saw her in a memory almost completely lost to time. Her fingers gripping the white edges of the photograph, careful not to smudge the image. That was my last memory before my eyes closed and my lungs stopped working. I dreamed. I was sitting in front of a full-length mirror in a gilded frame, dressed in slick white silk that flowed over my fragile body, outlining my form. A pair of green eyes stared back at me from the mirror, but once again, the familiar feeling struck me: they were not my eyes. I raised my right hand toward the mirror, letting my fingertips barely touch the cool glass. The girl in the mirror hesitated for a moment before copying the gesture. The mirror warmed as her fingers met mine. She leaned forward and opened her mouth. Warm breath fogged the glass, obscuring her face behind a misty veil. Her left hand began to trace a word on the mirror, awkwardly, uncertainly. It took me a few moments to understand it, because it was written backward to me. I focused, and then stared at it in confusion. I looked back at her face. A face that should have been mine, but wasn't. Oh, it resembled me. Yes, the girl in the mirror had always looked like me, but she wasn't me, and only I knew that. Now, as I looked closer, I saw scratches across her face, black dried blood crusted against pale skin. She was far paler than I was now. That thought terrified me, though I didn't know why. Dirt was tangled in her hair, as if she had been lying on the ground for a long time. She opened her mouth, as if to speak. I saw that several of her teeth were missing. I never heard her voice. The moment a faint rasp escaped her throat, the mirror shattered into fragments. When I woke up, I was screaming. Nurses rushed around me in frantic chaos, only feeding my panic. Adam was there, trying to calm me, trying to comfort me, but I was beyond reach. I screamed for my parents. I demanded they bring them to me. And for the first time since early childhood, I fought like I was possessed until they listened. Adam and the nurses whispered urgently to one another, arguing as they let my parents in. I didn't care. Something urgent, overwhelming surged through my veins, an all-consuming need that I could not resist. My mother and father rushed to me, and I rasped out the word the other girl had written on the mirror. Maxine. And suddenly, the world stopped, in two different ways. First, the doctor, the nurses, my mother and father, all of them froze, as if struck by rigor mortis. They stared at me with mouths open in horror. A silence fell over the room, deeper than anything I had ever felt before. It was as if we had dropped into some other layer of reality. I suppose that, in a way, we had. But I barely noticed, because the second layer of the world stopped as well. My muscles relaxed. Breathing came easily. My body obeyed commands it had always ignored before. For the first time in my life, I felt no pain. Maxine is the girl from the mirror. It's no wonder my parents found it so hard to understand. I was told that in cases like ours, there are special connections that must be taken into account. They simply couldn't see what I saw, because they didn't share those connections. That day, my parents gave me answers. Answers to questions I hadn't even known to ask. They told me a story. It wasn't a happy story, and they weren't particularly skilled storytellers. But it was my story. I was not born alone. There were two of us. Children delivered by cesarean section from my mother's tiny body. That night, we lay side by side in the hospital nursery, dressed in identical pink onesies. By morning, one of us was gone. There was no way to determine who took her. The security cameras were turned off. There were too many staff fingerprints to identify a culprit. And so she was lost in a maze of vague suspicions, while I was handed to my parents. That's why we never struggled with debt, even though my hospital bills should have cost a fortune. Payment for a monstrous mistake, I suppose. That's why the hospital staff always treated me with special kindness. The price of guilt. That's why the girl in the mirror never truly looked like me. Maxine is the girl from the mirror. Maxine is my twin. Peter disappeared. I suppose I should call him Dr. Lewis now, shouldn't I? Though that title no longer fits him. He stopped answering calls from the hospital. The police went looking for him, first out of concern, and then out of fear. I suppose one could say they are seeking justice. But I know the truth. They are afraid of what he might do. Of what he has already done. How do I know this? Not because of my connections at the hospital. But because of what they found in his backyard. Who did they find in his backyard? Take a guess. I don't know why they allowed me to see the body. Perhaps my parents felt guilty. After all, they had hidden something very important from me. They kept Maxine a secret, pretending she had never existed. They wanted to protect me. I understand that. And I think I can forgive them. They let me see the body. What I saw did not surprise me. Pale skin. An emaciated body. Scrapes all over her. Dirt tangled in her hair. But I noticed other things as well. Missing fingernails, torn away from scratching at the wooden coffin. The bluish tint of her face from suffocation. Bruises across her body, where she had thrashed and fought desperately for air, for life. I wasn't surprised. Because it was her, the same girl from the mirror. And I was with her when she was buried alive. Twins are a strange phenomenon. And although many studies have been conducted, it's still difficult to fully understand how the bond between twins works. However, it's widely known that twins share stronger connections than ordinary siblings. For example, twins can sometimes sense what the other is thinking. They often choose similar partners. Sometimes, what one twin feels, the other feels too. Pain, for example. The autopsy provided so many answers, though I'm not sure I wanted them. Her bones showed signs of numerous fractures that had never healed properly, including a severe break in her arm, the same arm my mother once believed I had broken when I was 10. She was missing several teeth, ripped out at the root. Her entire back was covered in knife scars, wounds that had been reopened again and again, never allowed to truly heal. Her entire body was a living record of the torture she endured for all 16 years. I wonder if she knew there was another girl who was suffering alongside her. Peter was never found. It disgusts me now to know that he was conducting his sick experiments on us. It wasn't enough for him to satisfy his sadistic urges on Maxine's flesh alone. No, he needed to observe the afterimage, the imprint it left on me. The police took thousands of photographs of his house. I was told there was a torture room there. They won't let me see the photos. I'm not sure I want to. I'm afraid that one day I'll see it anyway, in a dream, and recognize it instantly. Now that my pain is gone, I suppose I should be happy. After so many years under the weight of this torment, freedom brings indescribable relief. And Maxine, without a doubt, is also free from the years of suffering she endured. And yet, there is something in me that misses it. Misses it because, as I realized too late, it was proof that Maxine was alive. Which is better, I wonder, to know that she is dead and no longer suffering? Or that she was alive, with at least the possibility of being saved? Should I be glad that she has found peace? Or grieve because she is dead? But more than anything else, this is what haunts me. When she looked into the mirror, did she see me looking back at her? And that's it for today's stories, guys. So what do you think? Did you like them or not? Write your thoughts in the comments, and as usual, I'll say a few words of my own. What can I say? I really liked both stories. I liked the first one because of the way it was told, like an interview, right? You have the interviewer and the person being interviewed. That was really cool. I genuinely enjoyed that. I also liked how the fate of the victims in the first story was so unconventional, very interesting, unusual. You start imagining how horrifying that would look in reality. Obviously, something like that couldn't happen in real life, but the way it was twisted and presented was very creative and unusual. Some psychopath did that to them, and it's all described in detail. Sure, it's surreal, but if you abstract yourself from reality, it's creepy in a cool, unusual way. And the emotional narration from the detective really worked for me too. As for the second story, the concept itself was just awesome. I really liked how at first you're following along, not understanding what's going on at all. Why does the girl keep feeling pain? Why this now? Why that now? And then at the end, you finally find out, and it's such a great reveal. Naturally, you start suspecting that maybe it's connected somehow, that she might be feeling the pain of another person. But the fact that they're twins, that twist was really cool. I really liked that plot twist. The only thing that confused me a bit is why Peter alone was labeled the maniac. It would have been really interesting if the parents had been involved too. That would have been insane. Or even if the entire hospital staff, and the parents, including the protagonists, were part of the experiment. That would have been absolutely mind-blowing. Like everyone is awful, absolute monsters, and she's the only true victim. That would have felt like some kind of anomalous experiment story. But overall, even though it didn't turn out exactly how I expected, I really liked it. I really liked it. I give the second story a big, fat thumbs up. Especially that one. So what do you think? Share your thoughts in the comments. Thank you so much for watching. If you liked it, leave a like, subscribe to the channel. Once again, thank you for watching, and see you next time.